setting things up real quick. Alright, just setting things up here. And okay, looks like we're all set. Alright. Well, I really don't even know how to start this. First time I've gone live, first time I've utilized the community posts. I decided I wanted to do this reaction live. I was initially recording for a live reaction, and I started talking to myself, or well, to the camera, after the game had finished, and I kind of started going into a reaction type format, or at least the typical reaction format for me. And I thought it would be kind of fun to test out a live stream here, just for whatever reason. So it's not going to be as clean, or as in terms of it's not going to be cut, and you're still going to hear like all my ramblings. I mean, if I talk for 30 minutes, you're probably still going to be. I mean, usually if I talk for 30 minutes without looking at any sort of notes, it's usually only going to trim down to like 25 minutes. But enough opening here. Let's go ahead and chat about this contest. Now, I'm going to try and approach this as level-headed as I can, because I know as us Bears fans, it's really easy. I'm going to move my camera a little bit here. It's really easy to get caught up in emotions and start saying things you're going to regret. And in that recording that I was initially planning on making a live reaction, I did have a couple harsh and I guess very vulgar things to say. Not the type of stuff I want to post on the internet. And yeah, so I'm going to be completely straight up. I'll let my emotions get the best of me today. I really shouldn't have. You know, when will I learn? When will I learn, right? I seem to have had this problem for quite a while, going back to even middle school when I started following this team. I will say I've gotten better at managing my emotions, but still, there are definitely times where this thing just boils over, and I can't help but say a couple inflammatory statements at the top of my lungs. So, I don't know. I'm trying to take this as level-headed as I can. And so, yeah, I don't know. This should, I hope, be fun. And, yeah, if you guys want to go ahead and enter the chat. I do ask, if you are going to chat, try and keep it civil. Because I know I've tried not to address this a lot. But, you know, it's no secret if you've been following me for enough. What is recommended? Okay, I'm not sure what YouTube's telling me about stuff, so let's continue. But it really isn't a secret on this channel that the majority of my subscribers are not Bears fans. In fact, the majority of them are actually Packer fans who subscribed to me from one video, really, that I made. Well, it was the last time that these two teams played in Soldier Field, the fabled I Still Own You game. And so that video was very rash, very harsh. I said a lot of things that I really kind of regret looking back at it. You know, I looked back at it a couple weeks ago, And I thought, I don't. Yeah, no, I deserve the inflammatory comments. I deserve the trash talk. I deserved some of those comments. I really did. With some of the things that I said, I really went off the rails on that one. But this team's 3-10 now. It's the fourth time in 5 games, and the last 4 times Justin Fields has started, that this team has the ball down less than 3 points, or 3 or less points. And they failed to convert. And you know what? This was, out of all 4 of these games where they've had this opportunity to try and tie this game or win this game, this was the best that they had looked. And it's the 5th time this season they had a chance against Minnesota, where Emir Smith, yeah. And so, yeah, that was a really frustrating way to end the drive, and I will say I did like what the broadcast did, and they said that it was a really bad route from Equanimeous St. Brown because it's easy to blame that on Justin. And while he does still deserve some blame for that pick. That throws there if St. Brown makes his cut faster, because you look back at that replay and it's clear to see St. Brown was incredibly slow coming out of that route, turning around and getting in. It gave Jair Alexander way too much time to come and jump that pass. And so yeah, that one I'm not gonna sit here and completely blame on Justin, but the second one was his fault, and that's just because it's do or die time. We're forcing throws because there is no way we have to be aggressive, and this team isn't necessarily the greatest at being aggressive. And you know what? Justin had over 250 yards passing, I think. Hang on. I have the game stats here. Yeah, 250 yards passing on 20 completions. I mean, this is the most he's thrown in a while, and he had 11 straight completions. Only had 5 incompletions. Granted, 2 of them were picks, but after that close drop by Montgomery where he kind of almost caught it with like the 2 fingers, which broke the 11 straight completions, the only completions after that were the picks. So he had only 3 real incomplete passes in this game, and I thought, and yeah, you know what the most frustrating part about this is? The 2 picks were in the last 2 minutes, right? Of course, right? Of course, this team plays good for 45 minutes, but can't finish the last 15. And this has been the story of the last 2 months, or for some of these games. Can't finish against Detroit, played a fantastic 45 minutes, had an awful last 15 minutes, played all right against Atlanta. That one was pretty close throughout, but they still had a 10-point lead at one point. And when Christian Watson caught that touchdown pass, I really, that's when reality was starting to hit in, because I was kind of like, man, we're up by 13 points. I'm feeling great. We're going to lead at halftime. Once Watson, yeah. I'm going to go ahead and address some of the questions you've got in the chat going here. From Trey Talk Sports, I have a question. Do we trade Justin? No. That is a bad decision, in my opinion. I think that's a bad decision to trade Justin, because, well, he is a great runner. I think he showed a lot of promise in this game through the passing game. Dude had 2 pretty much 50-yard completions and bombs. I mean, Equanimeous St. Brown, while he did have that terrible route, he had a great route. Granted, Alexander kind of wasn't sure where he was, not necessarily sure where he was, but he was a little late coming out of that play. He was kind of caught off guard, and he got burnt on that play. So, he had the great 56. I think that was the distance for that, 54, something like that. That was the longest pass play of the game. And then he had another huge bomb to N'Keal Harry for 49 yards. So I think he has the ability to throw deep. And I think while there is definitely some issues and some things to work on, I think focusing on getting him support in the receiving game can very well help. Because you look at the injuries this team had and some of the pieces that were out. Mooney was out today, the big piece on the offense. Herbert's been out, so we don't have our secondary running back who's been better than Montgomery this season, arguably. And so those are two absolutely huge injuries that if both of them play, we may win this game. And then you look at the defense, who actually played not bad considering the injuries we had. No Brisker, no Jackson, so our two starting safeties weren't playing today. No Jackson, no Brisker, no Kyler Gordon, no Kendall Vildor, who I know I've rat on a couple times. I know a lot of Bears fans like to rat on Kendall Vildor, but he's better than some of the replacements. But I mean, our replacements today, a lot of these rookies' first NFL action, they played pretty well considering what Aaron Rodgers can do to this and what he has done to this franchise and what he continues to do to this franchise. And so, frankly, the defense didn't play absolutely awful, but, as per usual, they couldn't finish and they got gassed and started to let up those bigger plays. And then, it's just what Aaron does. He capitalizes on mistakes. And, again, if this game lasts 45 minutes, the Bears win. Because they led up to the end of the third quarter. If, some of these games, if the Bears, they can play three good quarters. The problem is that they need to finish and play 60 minutes. And I'm going to be real with you. They've lost 6 straight. Very few of these losses do I completely blame on Justin. And so, I've been thinking about it, and the defense had that stretch of games that they just were allowing everything, and that was probably the biggest reason that I blame that they lost to the Lions, because you have to do you have to go 91 yards, and they have like 6 minutes to do so, and they do it in like 4 minutes. That's on the defense. They can't let that up. That really shouldn't be a touchdown in any scenario. And so, there are other factors, but yes, this has been really rough. This team continues to lose close games. This reminds me a lot of the 2017 season, which the team lost a lot of close games. They were 5-11 that year. Had one win in conference because 4 of their wins was against the AFC North. Somehow they went 5-11, beat a 13-3, a team that would end up going 13-3 with Mike Glennon as their starting quarterback, and would end up sweeping that division. But the next year they broke out. But this team had a lot of close losses this year, and they have had, especially in the last couple months. And I think for me as a fan, that's the most frustrating part about this, because if they just sucked, they just suck. Because if you haven't noticed, in any of my videos, I have this up, or this, yeah, there we go. That's how it works on the camera. That's a Colorado Buffaloes logo. This is where I go to school, and I'm in the band at this school. I had to sit through all 6 home games this season for the Colorado Buffaloes, and let me tell you, those last couple home games were absolutely brutal to sit through. The entire stadium was pretty much vacant at the start of the second half against Oregon, and because this game against Utah that happened just a week ago was right after Thanksgiving, not a lot of students were back. It was completely empty the entire time, and they were down 42-0 at half. And I'm laughing. I'm having fun at the game because I'm laughing at them, right? And so, this is a completely different story, because this team almost butters us up and plays us up, gives us a lead, and gives us some semblance of hope before crumbling and losing in the end. So it's really frustrating as a fan of this team, because they keep finding ways to lose. And, I'll go ahead and address some of the other things. We should have had that. Hopefully no more Aaron Rodgers after this. I truly do hope, but, if it's Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay has spent so much money on keeping him there, and frankly, he's had not a great season for Aaron Rodgers standards. I don't know. I don't know where the Packers go for here. Um, I know some people have talked about the trade proposition that Colin Cowherd ended up making up by trading like 2 firsts or trading Aaron Rodgers and maybe like another consolation player or something and getting like 2 firsts and a couple players from Seattle to give Aaron Rodgers to Seattle. But I don't know if I see that happening because Green Bay is in a very interesting situation here. It's the first time in a decade that this, more than a decade, honestly, even long, maybe 2 decades? I don't know. That Green Bay may have the worst situation in the NFC North if it's not us still. Because Detroit's actually looked all right this season. Minnesota is going to take the division next week against Detroit if they beat them. And you got us in Green Bay. So I don't know where either of us end up going from here on out. But all I know is that when it comes to signing players, the Bears are in a better situation than Green Bay because of all the cap space that they have. But we need more help on the defense, and wide receivers are the problem. We've just been an injured team this year. Do you think this is Aaron Rodgers' last year? It's a tough question. You're right. We need more help on defense in the wide receiver position. I will say, I love what I see from Jack Sanborn. He has been the highlight of this defense in the last month as he's taken over for Roquan Smith, if you will. I think now Jack Sanborn's played so well that honestly the Robert Quinn trade is looking more like it's hurting us overall because he was such a force on the defensive front. And our defensive front now is starting to hurt because his presence isn't there. He's one of those players. It's like when Khalil Mack was here. His presence alone would take up 2 offensive linemen. Now, we don't have that situation, so it's not super hard to block us, if that makes sense. Which is why even if someone like, Robert Quinn is having an off season or Roquan Smith's having an off season, his presence alone makes other teams have to plan for that. And so that's, I think, my opinion on those 2 players, and I'm really sad that both of them are gone. But, it's interesting with Roquan because I don't know if we were going to resign him anyways. So I think it probably was all right to get that second round. I think that was the plan, was to get the second round for Roquan and then trade away the second round for Claypool, which he played pretty well today. It's his best game with the Bears in terms of receiving yards. And it looks like they're finally trying to get it. He's finally starting to get a little rhythm in the offense, and that's very important as we head into next season. But, yeah, we need to chase some sort of receivers. If it's not, someone that's already established, I think the most frustrating part about this position specifically is that we're going to struggle. The big question for the draft: do we go with a receiver? Who we pick with our first pick? Because it's going to be a top 3 pick. It very well could be the 2nd overall pick. And so, do we go with a star D lineman? Do we go with an all-pro offensive lineman? Do we go for someone like Jackson Smith-Njigba, who was with Justin Fields at Ohio State because we couldn't get Olave? Do we go ahead and grab Jackson Smith-Njigba earlier than everyone expects because we don't have another first-round pick and we want to get that connection and establish a solid receiver connection? That's the big question I have, and I think that's what the big question and the big task for Poles and Eberflus are for the draft, what we want to do with that first-round pick. Other than that, it's also up to what they do in free agency. That can shift what we see going on afterwards. I'm not sure. Anyways, thanks, Brian, for the question. Tiff asks, Aaron Rodgers always looked good against the Bears. The Bears always allowed this. We're going 3-14 this season. Our defense gave up last month. Okay, that wasn't a question. Never mind. My bad. But you're right. We're going to go 3-14 now. This was our last chance to win a game. And it's not like I'm being pessimistic here. Our final 4 games are against Buffalo, Philadelphia, Detroit, and Minnesota. and that game against Detroit is on the road. The other 3 games are home games, but they're going to be absolutely smoked in all 3 of them. So, there's your answer as well, Brian. Do you think Philly will destroy us in 2 weeks? Abso-freaking-lutely. They killed Tennessee today. They're gonna beat the Giants next week, and yeah, we're gonna have things. It's gonna be a bit tough here. So yeah. Tell you what, I am really hoping that this can be better. Well, I guess what we can say is that we are not going to be the first team eliminated this season. The Houston Texans are officially eliminated from the playoffs. You talk about a tank. That is a masterful tank right there. That is some real professional, legendary stuff. So, I'm not sure where this team decides to go for first. And I think that first question from Trey Talk Sports about trading Justin is the least of our problems right now. Because Justin, remember, he is still a second year. This is still his first year starting the whole way through. Because last year he was out for injury a little bit. Only started 10 games last year. This year is the first time that he's really sticking with it and playing the entire season. This is a developmental year. And while Justin Fields has shown shades of greatness, but he's making a lot of the rookie mistakes in year 2. He's making a lot of mistakes that, you can't, at this point, many quarterbacks' careers, you wouldn't expect them to make. I think for me, with Justin, it comes down to next season. What will he be able to do? And if he still doesn't show signs of improvement, especially in the passing game, then I think maybe you start thinking about moving on from him. But it would be very difficult, again, to move on from a quarterback like this. And again, this is just like what happened with Trubisky. The previous coaching staff drafts him, and then a new coaching staff is signed in the following season. Second time this has happened in a row. Trubisky was thrown into a situation with Mike Glennon and John Fox as his head coach. That was an awful situation. Then Nagy got one great year out of him. Trubisky showed signs, and I think that he's not awful as a quarterback. He probably will be, a backup. He's probably going to be more remembered for something like Marcus Mariota in terms of his legacy. But yeah, Justin is the main focus for this franchise right now, and making sure that he gets the support he needs. I think that is priority number 1, because I think some teams this year have shown that if you have a really, really good offense, you can beat anyone. The Kansas City Chiefs have been a prime example of this over the past handful of years. Their defense has been around average to below average even. But because their offense is like the best in the league by a long shot, this is probably they've still been able to win games, go to the conference championship game year after year after year, and host the game for since 2018. They've been hosting it for 4 years in a row. It'd be 5 if they went back again this year. So yeah, they need support, and thanks for arriving. I think I was just about to bring this up. Jalen Hurts received that support and just had his best game of the year. Jalen Hurts is a great example of what happens with a quarterback that has a couple question marks. He's running a lot in his first year or two. And remember, year 2 is not going to define their career. There are plenty of quarterbacks who have come out and exploded in year 3 or even so. Josh Allen's a perfect example. He's now one of the best quarterbacks in the league. You got to be, if Buffalo moved on from it and he performed the way and he exploded with another team, imagine how stupid everyone would be calling Buffalo. Even though people were calling for his head and calling to trade him the year prior. So I think sticking with Fields this offseason is the top priority, because he's the best playmaker on this offense. again, needs to work throwing the ball, but getting that receiver support should really help with that. Because, yeah, and it's true. Justin Fields, if he fixes his mistakes next year, that's his answer. So, Lamar and Vic won games. Fields just runs to run. Fields needs to learn when to run. Lamar and Vic ran in situations when they needed to, not running for fun like Fields. Fields only ran for like 2 times in the second half. They didn't run Fields at all in the second half. He actually was much more of a thrower in this game. So that's also a thing. Lamar, he had less support than Vic. Vic, when he was with the Eagles, he had Deshaun Jackson. And he had Jeremy Maclin. Those were 2 great, reliable receivers. Who on the Bears right now is a reliable receiver? Darnell Mooney. That's it. And Mooney, for a lot of teams, would be a wide receiver too. So, I will give Justin slack here. This game broke a 7 straight game. He threw a touchdown pass in 7 straight games prior to this one. So, and Fields threw for 250 yards too. So, yeah. Fields should have ran in the second half in order to win. Then you run when you need to win. Yes, it looks like they were trying to ride with the running game. That's not something I'm going to judge on. But, I think for me, I was more emotionally invested in this game because of the stakes and the fact that, both teams were at the tide in terms of all-time win times and all-time wins. And with the win, Green Bay is now the franchise that has the most wins in NFL history. And it's the first time in 101 years that the Bears are not at the top. And, I was initially very frustrated when this team lost this game. I'm going to be honest. But now that I've had a little bit to kind of settle down and kind of relax and look at this kind of logically, I'm not too upset anymore. But, I liked what I saw in the passing game. He had a couple good bombs. He had 2 pretty much 50-yard passes in this game, in which I don't even think he had one in the last handful of games anyways. So they've tried to air it out. I will give him props for trying to air the ball out a little more. He's still only throwing 25. He still only threw 25 times in this game, but he only threw 5 incompletions. Hang on, let me pull up the stats here. Aaron Rodgers threw 6 more times than Justin Fields, had 2 less completions, and had about 70 less yards. And while your argument could very well be, well, who ended up winning the game? Aaron Rodgers. Well, that's just what he does. He just finds a way to win, and he's playing our defense. Our defense was keeling over, and they bent, but they didn't break in the first 3 quarters. But they broke in the 4th, and that's what ended up helping them lose this game. And again, Fields couldn't come through in the big-time moments again. And that's something that I think he needs to really work on because he's been really good in the first 3 quarters of these games so far, in some of these games. But I'm really waiting to see that big 4th quarter performance that helps guide this team to a victory, which I haven't seen yet. And I think that's the big thing that I'm looking for at some point. And all right, here we go, Larry. Your point is Lamar and Vic ran in situations they needed in order to win. Why would Fields run in the first half, not to do in the second half to win? And then I think you make a good point here, Junior, because he was probably told not to. Halftime adjustments happened, and then they would decide to probation to try to stick with the passing more. Halftime adjustment that probably attempted to predict how the Packers would respond to the run game, but it ended up not working. And I think it's a fair choice. But, sometimes this stuff doesn't work, and at the end of the day, I was really upset, knowing that the record was gone, but, I am not, gonna, linger on it much more. I think for me, personally, that would be just toxic to my own mental state. And you know what? The Packers deserve it. They deserve to take this record away from us. They've played so good for the past 30 years, and the Bears have sucked for the majority of the last 30 years. I'm honestly surprised they didn't take us over sooner, because they have, they are making sure that they're staying competitive, and not only that, but they're actually going to end up winning these games. And while they've had a really bad season, they still have 5 wins. This team is not going to win 5 games now, because they're losing to Buffalo, they're losing to Philadelphia, they're losing to Minnesota. The only game that they have even a potential of even sniffing a win is against Detroit. And so, I didn't come into the season with a I didn't go into the season expecting anything, but I think the way they've played in the last month has given me a little bit of hope for the future. And unfortunately, it's caused me to get a little more emotionally invested in some of these games than I would have liked. And so, From Wolfman. I'm one of the Packer fans that have watched your earlier rants to the other games. Shocker. The 2 Packer videos from last year are still the most viewed videos on my channel by a long shot. I don't even think... Has any other video on my channel actually hit more than 2,000 views? One more. 20,000 views for the 2 Packer reaction videos last season. 2.3 thousand for the Tampa Bay Massacre last season. And then the next most viewed video right there is another Packer video. So these videos are the ones that do the best on my channel, and it's no secret that a lot of the people that end up subscribed to my channel are Packer fans. But I think you are a great fan, and I love your passion for your team. It makes what rivalries fun hanging there. Thank you. I really do appreciate that. As a sports fan, it's really tough when you continuously get beat up by your biggest rival, and especially in football, because you only play twice a year, and it's not like, in hockey, you play your rival. In basketball as well, you probably play your rivals about 3, 4, 5 times a year. You don't really see too much of, and because the turnaround in those games are much quicker, and so, you kind of move on from those games a little bit faster. But with football, baseball, you barely even think about these rivalries. Like, you get up, basically, think about it from a Chicago perspective. Cubs-Cardinals are more relevant to this video. Cubs-Brewers. If the Brewers beat the Bears, oh my goodness, I'm starting to get mixed up my sports. The Brewers beat the Cubs. So what? They play, most of the time, they play the very next day. It's so easy to get over a loss in baseball, especially in the regular season. It's much harder to get over a loss in football because you only play once every week. So you have these games sit for a week, and there's all this discussion that builds over it. So you kind of get what I'm trying to say here. The games not only win the division against rivals, but just in general means so much more in football. And so it's very easy to just get so salty, toxic about football specifically. And it is the most popular sport in America, so you do draw that type of stuff. I will stand by the fact that sports is probably the most toxic community on planet Earth. That could be very arguable, but it's probably the biggest, that contains the widest range of widest age range and the widest range of types of people, but it's also probably the most toxic just because of that as well. You can blame and you can cherry pick things from other types of fields, but it's very much, this is definitely the most toxic fandom in the world because of just how widespread it is. It's billions of people strong. I'm going to go ahead and catch up on some other things, but, I really do appreciate the respect. From those earlier videos last season, I got so many views about them because I ended up talking trash. And that's what the media wants, and that's what the people want. They want to see people get upset and whatnot. And that's why my most recent Packer video is only at 630 views right now, because I didn't go completely full rage on the Bears and start, yelling about how I'm super salty and mad that Aaron Rodgers owns us, and I'm like super pissed, and I think as a sports fan, I've tried to grow out of that type of mindset because it made my life miserable, in middle school, because I would get so upset after every single loss. The entire day would be ruined. I couldn't talk to anyone. And when people would, tell me like, oh, bad loss, haha, you guys can't even make the playoffs, I get super upset. And that's also just because I'm in middle school and I'm not mature yet, so I don't know how to react with that type of stuff. But it's just a maturity thing, and I'm trying, and especially as I'm trying to get into the sports media, and as I'm trying to get into play-by-play broadcasting, which that is my dream profession. If for those who don't know, I have been calling hockey games for my college. Scobuff Sports, if you're curious. Just played our big rival Colorado State, killed them 8-2, fantastic. But as someone who's trying to get into the sports media, I'm trying to break away a little bit from the zone in, focusing on just one team and live or die, ride or die. My entire day is affected by whether they win or lose. I'm trying to move away from that. Well, it is nice to kind of just sit there and emotionally invest yourself. It's fun. I think for me, I'm trying to do something else and try to take a look at this more logically. Yeah, no, I really appreciate the positive sentiment, because I know Bears-Packers is one of the most hostile and toxic rivalries in all football, college, professional. It is really bad. And so, I don't hate the Packers as a franchise, right? I don't hate the Packers as a franchise. I actually have a lot of respect for the franchise as a whole. I really admire the whole Lambeau Field and the whole majority owner thing. I think that's actually super cool, and I think it actually helps them be better because they don't have an owner that's, holding the entirety down. Look at Washington. Now that Snyder's selling the team is thriving. So, I think for me, once Aaron Rodgers does leave, my hate for this franchise will go down a lot. And I'll be able to enjoy. I'm also just kind of bored and frustrated. I'm also just frustrated that the rivalry has just been dominated by one team for so long as well. For Bears and Packers fans, the game still is always must watch, but for people who are neutral fans of the AFC, neutral fans in most other matchups besides their own, the game doesn't mean much. They don't really pay attention to it anymore. The only thing going for it right now is the history, and it has become one of those historical matchups that's just become so boring to watch. And so I'm just trying to kind of, I don't know where I'm going with this, but I'm going to go ahead and move on here. All right, Lamar Hurts runs the situation they need to, and that's why they win a lot of games. They mix, and that's, I think, what they need to do. They've been runs, again, they're important to remember. They have support. They're more developed because of coaches. It's just different. It's true. It is true. They do have different coaches in different complete scenarios, and they have more support. Fields can definitely learn to be a smart runner. By next year, he should be a winning more for sure. He really should be. If he isn't, especially if they give him support, that is a big alarm. Fields is still the best QB in his draft, but I feel like he can be even better. I agree. I feel like he can be even better too. But it also starts with support, because quarterback is one position. He can't do it all. And, unfortunately, with the quarterback position, or fortunately, you get pretty much wins and losses, ride or die by your play. And so, you get a lot of the blame or the praise. And so, naturally, for this loss, Justin Fields is going to get a lot of the blame by the press and a lot of the fault with those two picks at the end of the game. But you take away the last 5 minutes of the game, he played better than Aaron Rodgers. I really do think that because Rodgers was able to capitalize in the fourth quarter and Justin Fields was not. It was the fact that the game was super close that helped